Let's welcome Marie.
Thank you. And I want to thank John and Phil for saying what they've done, because it has really prepared, I would say, an understanding of what I have to say as one little person in the journey. I will share my journey, and it's a personal one. You may or may not relate to it, but my journey has been, I grew up in a similar background to John. That was the church that I also, the church bodies that I grew up in, just certain 10 miles, 15, 20 miles away, but we were very similar in many, many ways. So I identify with John's background. My father, however, became a Mennonite as an adult from the Reformed religion, Reformed church, and they had, in those days, had alternate services, Reformed church one Sunday, Lutheran church the next Sunday in the same building. So occasionally we would visit because my grandfather lived with me, with us. I was always awed by the liturgy and the beauty, the stained glass windows. So something, even as a little girl, was taking place of longing for something, I think. Longing for the beauty, longing for more than just the simplicity. Much as that made sense logically from where we were coming from, there was a deep longing there. I would say that I look at my life and I see that path from those longings into the readings that I did and the journeys that I've done up into the years now into our 90th decade and 60 years of marriage. So Catholic influences along my spiritual journey. And a journey is always ongoing, and you're never quite sure what that ending will be and how it will happen. In 1994, when Vic began talking about retirement from his work in 1996 as president of Goshen College, an inner question emerged for me. What will my life's goal be for the years of retirement? My role as full-time support spouse during the years of his presidency had been satisfying. And now I was ready to claim something that was new. All three daughters had married, and our oldest lived in Tucson, Arizona. So on our visits there, we were intrigued with the desert of the Southwest. One Monday evening at supper in their home, she invited us to go with her to evening prayers, centering prayer with the Benedictine sisters. I found this experience very satisfying spiritually, and I couldn't say what it was about. I loved the rituals, I loved the silence of the group, the people coming together intentionally, gathering intentionally to be present to the Holy One. That had never been part of my church going, to be present to the Holy One. We were there because we wanted to worship. What did that mean? But to put those words there were very meaningful. As a young mother, I remembered earlier reading about Brother Lawrence, who was very happy serving in the kitchen and washing dishes. And as a mother of little girls, I thought, how in the world does that happen? I remember finding inner peace with the daily ordinary tasks, but it was a great challenge. Then I also read Quaker Thomas Kelly's book, A Testament of Devotion. I don't know, I think that would have been about the same time or the time period during those 6 years that we lived in Ohio. And it spoke of the inner light. That metaphor has stuck with me all through these years. What is the inner light that is within me and how, but I believe there was. And I longed for the inner light to be growing and understanding that more fully. John Roth, on his first day here talking with us, spoke about the mystical piece of the Anabaptist movement. I never quite heard about the mystical piece of the Anabaptist movement. I had heard much other stories of martyrdom and all of that led into where we were at the present time, but I never framed that with a mystical piece at all. And I think that is a deep longing that is something among us that we long for. When my 60th birthday was approaching, a year or so before, I had the inner sense that I needed to give attention to what God wanted me to do after my life with Goshen College. And this awareness was not at all sadness. It was an anticipation of something new, unknown, but I needed to pay attention. I was receiving spiritual direction at that time, and I talked about this with my director. She affirmed my need to be attentive. What opened up for me was the possibility of taking training for spiritual direction, and my spiritual director gave some suggestions for testing this call. My sense was that it would be wise to take some training outside the Mennonite context, since I had been deeply immersed in the workings of the Mennonite Church for 12 years. I selected an ecumenical program at the Shalem Institute for Spiritual Direction, located in Bethesda, Maryland. I began a 2-year program during Vic's final year as president, and then the first year of our retirement, 1995 and 1996. In my particular year, that group that gathered for 9-day residencies each year, each of the 2 years, we would have 9 days together. It was a very diverse group. Catholics, a few, Episcopalians, probably more, a Moravian, Presbyterian, Baptist, Church of the Brethren, one, and a Mennonite. And there were probably other denominations that I can't name right now. In between the residencies, we were assigned readings about contemplation, reports on our experiences of spiritual direction, of receiving spiritual direction and giving spiritual direction, and reflections on the readings of contemplation. It was a wonderful way to enter retirement. Shalem Institute for Spiritual Formation was begun by 3 people: a Catholic nun, Rosemary Doherty, an Episcopalian priest, Tilden Edwards, and a Methodist psychiatrist, Gerald May. I have been a spiritual director since that time. Each year, Vic and I visit Tucson since our kids have, since we've retired, and I continue to enjoy the weekly centering prayer services with the Benedictine women. In 2001, after spending Christmas and New Year's there, we drove to Seattle, Washington to serve as interim pastors from February through April. I had purchased the book by Thomas Keating from the sisters, Open Heart, Open Mind, Open Heart, at that time. I planned to read that during the interim pastorate. And by the completion of reading Keating's book, I decided that centering prayer was a discipline I wanted to do. I chose to do that for my spiritual growth. That discipline continues through the present time. I begin each day with a 20-minute sit in silence. I continue to grow in my awareness of the value of silence in my life. It's necessary to find times in the midst of daily happenings. I have found time driving in the car to various places in the course of a day. That's a good time to not have the radio on, but to be quiet, except for watching and being a careful driver. I don't fill my mind with sound, but allow it to be quiet, except for attention to driving. And I value that time. Believing in the value of this discipline of silence about 7 or 8 years ago, I sensed the inner light again and explored having a group centering prayer service take place at College Mennonite Church, my home congregation. My pastor at that time gave great endorsement, and since this was such a new happening for Mennonites locally, I thought it was a good plan to start with short periods of time. So I opted for 4 Monday nights of Advent and 6 Monday nights of Lent. I felt that the shorter times of commitment would be a good introduction to the enriching experiences. I followed the format I learned and experienced both the monastery that I've experienced both at the monastery with the Benedictine sisters and also at the retreat center the Desert House of Prayer that I attend when we're in Tucson. So I'd like to read 2 paragraphs that say what I usually say in introducing a session of centering prayer. Welcome to this time of centering prayer. We come as we are, bringing with us the joys and concerns, even the sorrows of this day. We come in time of need with God, the one who is love. This prayer time is the silence of being with God. The fruit of praying contemplatively manifests itself through a gentle, growing awareness of God as the source of the center and all of this, as the source and center of all. This awareness happens over time, and I will attest to that. Growing in the awareness of the presence of God is not something that happens immediately and you carry forth through that over the years, but it comes and it's gentle and it's a growing awareness that happens. Centering prayer is about our intention to be with God, not about what we expect to receive or feel when it is over. God welcomes the desire for this that you come with. So this time in a centering prayer includes a meditative walk around the circle of chairs arranged and guided thoughts about a use of a sacred word, brief instructions about quieting one's mind, lighting the candles, listening to a selected writing, following, and then follow with a 20-minute sit. I've been with the Desert House of Prayer where they have 25-minute sits, and have already been there when they get up at the end of the 25 and walk the circle again, sit for another 25. And those are very beneficial, lengthy times of silence. It was important to me that this be an ecumenical service to all churches included in the local Protestant ministerial group and St. John's Catholic Church were sent weekly invitations for their newsletters. And it was a great experience to have that variety of people gather for this time of prayer. We had regular attendees coming from St. John's and various Mennonite congregations with a few other denominations locally. We had a short break with a cup of tea and visiting, and then followed with a 30-minute teaching of meditation. There are excellent videos of Thomas Keating, Richard Rohr, Joan Chittister, James Finley, leaders in the contemplative movement. We listen to these for meditation after the meditation each evening. So there's acquaintance with a number of teachers that teach this. Several years ago, when Vic and I decided to go to Tucson early in December, that we could celebrate Christmas with our family there, this interrupted the sequence of the Advent season, so the service was continued with another member of the congregation who is a spiritual director. Last year, he was unable to continue with a Lenten series, so I'm not sure whether anything will be happening this year or not. Another contemplative experience is the use of the breviary, which contains readings of morning, and I forgot to bring my copy along. It's a well-worn copy. It includes morning, noon, and evening devotionals, reading of Psalms, and prayers. Some years ago at the seminary, I was invited to participate in a morning prayer service, and I think the class was using it as a guide. I liked the readings there. They're reading, there's usually a paragraph by some mystic or some other person that is writing. Mary Herr, who along with her husband, Jean, founded the Hermitage, was my spiritual director for many years. And then when they moved to Kansas, she recommended several names to me, and I chose to have a spiritual director who is Catholic. I have found it very helpful, full of meaning and personal challenges, and she's a great nurturer of the contemplative life. a few other connections. Of course, our books. Over here, I have a few that are Catholic ones, a few others as well. And there's many more. Henry Nouwen has been a real lift for me, and Keating's book, Open Mind and Open Heart. Another author that we've enjoyed is Richard Rohr, a Franciscan and founder of the Center of Action and Contemplation. And I've read some of his books and CDs or DVDs to listen to, and I've attended probably 4 or 5 year-end seminars that he offered, which are no longer done at year's end. My life is spiritually richer for having participated in Catholic centering prayer services, using Catholic prayer guides, emphasis on reading the Psalms, regular nurturing, encouraging, challenging from a spiritual director who offers deep listening and searching questions. My peer group of spiritual directors has 2 Catholic members who hold me accountable in my relationships with those who come for spiritual direction. I'm deeply blessed. My own faith heritage tends to be more active, many ways, as Phil alluded to serve others, as Matthew 25 teaches, but I value the enrichment of the contemplative side of my life for the connection to the Catholic experiences that have given me and nurtured me through this time. Thank you.